Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. A few weeks ago, I did an episode about the Ned Rig and all of the different equipment that you need to fish the Ned Rig and how to go about doing it. It was a really good video and I got a lot of positive feedback on it. But one of the biggest questions, if you go back through that video and look at the comments, you'll see a lot of people asking me whether I fish a Ned Rig on an exposed hook or on an EWG weedless style hook. And I got to tell you, I've got a lot of thoughts on this. And I've got basically three types of jig heads that I use for the Ned Rig. And I'll address those with you and talk about why I prefer each one. But I think it makes a big difference. And if you're only choosing one head, I really do think that you're probably limiting yourself to the number of bites that you're getting. And you may be losing fish because of it. So I want to talk about the Ned head and specifically what it is that you should be looking for when it comes to choosing the correct head for your Ned rigs. Before I do get into that, I do want to remind you guys that if you haven't signed up for my membership yet, you should do that so that you can take part in all of the live stream action and the additional videos that I'm providing to my members. Check it out. You can go to my homepage on your computer desktop, hit the join button, find out everything you need to do there. If you're using your mobile app to watch these videos, go to my YouTube homepage and click the membership button, and you should be able to find the details there. Also, if you're looking for a little help on your local lakes, check out the lake breakdowns that I'm doing with fishthemoment.com. Myself, Johnny Schultz, as well as Randy Blockett are covering lakes across the country, so check those out. The link's in the description. All right, guys, so like I said, a few weeks ago, I did a video on the Ned Rig, and I got a ton of questions regarding my hook. Everyone seems to be pretty confident in the setup and the technique itself, but there was a lot of debate about what hook to use. So let me address the hooks that I use. The first hook that I like to use is just an exposed lead head. Preferably something like this Berkeley half head, just a very, very basic jig head, a nice half moon style head. Another good one is just the one that Z-Man has. I think it's the Finesse Shrooms head. That's one I use as well. But I really, really like the exposed hook for several reasons. First and foremost, the hook itself is buried in the worm. So because it's buried in the worm, all you see coming out is the hook shank. To me, that is the number one thing that will increase your bites regardless of plastic bait that you're using. The more hook you have buried in your worm, the more camouflaged it is, resulting in the more bites you have. The more hook you have sticking out of your worm, whether it's a big EWG style hook or just a big worm hook, or the bigger the actual bend is that's coming out, it just seems like it becomes less finesse and it becomes something that the fish can see more and potentially don't actually get into their mouth when they bite it. The bigger the hook, the harder it is, no matter the size, for the fish to get the hook in its mouth. So that's something to be aware of. So number one, I love the fact that the hook shank is buried in the worm. The only part you see exposed is the little bit of the round bend plus the barb itself. To me, that's really key in increasing the number of bites that you get. The next most important thing has to do with the fact that since you have an exposed hook, you don't need as big of a hook because your hookups are going to be good. And what that means is you get better movement out of the Ned Rig, like this Maxcent Little General, which is one of my favorites, guys. So in this case, you get better movement out of the tail because it's a smaller hook shank. To me, that's a very big thing. The other part that goes into that is because your bait is more streamlined, because the hook is inside of your worm, you're going to allow the bait to have the best motion on the fall, whether that's the spiraling motion or the gliding motion. You don't have more hook sticking out of the bait, which creates more drag in the water and limits the bait from its natural action on the fall. That's something you want to be aware of. So to me, that's the ideal Ned Rig setup, is an exposed smaller hook. I think this is the 1/0 size, real basic. I generally like to go with real light weights. This is the 16th ounce. You get the best fall. You can trigger more bites because of the super slow fall, and it just seems to work really well. The next type of hook that I will use is very similar. So this is the Rains NR jig head. It's a tungsten head, so it's very, very similar to the half head. It's just one of those things that you have an exposed hook, you still get good tail movement out of the bait, and it's a really good thing. The key, the one thing that's nice about tungsten is this is a 1/8 ounce size, and you can see it's about the same size as the 16th ounce lead head. So from that standpoint, it's just one of those things that you can go a little bit smaller in jig head size. Uh, the other key to having tungsten is if I'm fishing around rock, I will get better sound out of the tungsten. So I do like to have tungsten if I'm fishing around a hard bottom. So gravel, pea gravel, rock, bluff walls, that type of thing. Generally, I will choose an exposed hook, still a 1/0, and a tungsten head so that I get the good movement out of the tail. I still have less drag in the water, and I get the best hookups possible because I have the exposed hook. And as we know, a lot of times with Ned rigs, you're going to be using finesse gear. I personally like to throw 6, 8 pound, sometimes 10-pound test. Generally, I've got a medium light spinning rod with, a 10-pound braid leader or a main line going to a fluorocarbon leader. When that's the case, I don't have super strong hook setting ability, but I don't need it. With the exposed hook, that's fine. All you got to do is put pressure on the fish, and these super sharp hooks, regardless of the hooks that you choose, the majority of them on the market now are laser sharp. You'll get that hook in even with light finesse gear. So that's something that's important to remember. The last style hook, and the one that it seemed like, based on the comments on that other video that I did, was a fan favorite, is the EWG style. And this is the Riot Baits Fidget hook. Now I got to tell you, this is my least favorite. I very rarely throw an EWG style Ned rig for a couple of reasons. Basically, you probably know what they already are based on why I like those ones. First and foremost, the hook shank itself is significantly longer. In this case, you can see it's probably 3/4 of an inch longer. And if that's the case, what does that do? That really limits my movement in the worm. So I'm shaking them the same. You can see we're getting basically very, very little tail motion out of this Gobayashi colored Little General, which is one of my absolute favorite colors, compared to the Copper Truce color, which is just shaking all over the place. Very little movement. You get way more action because I have a smaller hook. Now, the EWG style like that is definitely nice if you're fishing around heavy cover, whether it's a tree or you're pitching into a bush or around docks with brush piles underneath. Whatever it is, you definitely won't get stuck nearly as much with this. But I think you're limiting the number of bites that you get because you don't have the tail movement. And at the same time, you also now have a lot more exposed hook, which is going to limit the movement on the fall. It's going to create drag in the water, and therefore you're not going to get the same movement. Now, I know you're probably sitting there going, Matt, you're crazy. That's just a little bit of metal. But when you're throwing a 16th ounce of a bait that's falling very slowly to begin with, it will make a difference. Go and compare it, and I'm telling you, you'll see the difference. The other issue that I have with an EWG style hook is I do not get the same hookups that I would get with an exposed hook. And the reason for that is simple. It's because you're still probably using this on relatively light gear. And from that standpoint, it's harder to set the hook and get that home. Now, I'm not saying you're going to miss every bite, but I do think out of 10 bites, I probably lose one more fish on this than I would on the exposed hook. Now, that's just me, guys. I know a lot of you guys, if you're fishing from the bank, an EWG style is probably a really good bait to go with because of the fact that you're going to get stuck a lot less. But to me, I would rather throw the exposed hook and know that I'm probably going to get hung up a few extra times, but be willing to get those extra bites that I'm going to get out of the exposed hook and know that my landing percentage is going to go up dramatically with the exposed hook versus an EWG style hook. Now, guys, I'm going to end this video by saying fish with what you have confidence in. You guys asked me what my opinion is, and I had a ton of people in the comments asking me. So that's my Ned rig setup. Those are the 3 type of hooks that I will use, but generally the majority of the time, probably 90% of the time, if not more than that, I'm throwing the exposed hook in either a lead or a tungsten head based on bottom composition. So I hope it was helpful, but stick with what you have confidence in. If you feel like the EWG is the best style hook, by all means, keep doing it, guys. This sport is half confidence. It really is. So if you feel comfortable doing it, go with it. But you guys asked me for my opinion, so I'm sharing it with you. So I'd love to hear what hooks you guys like to use, what type of hooks. Put it in the comment section so that other viewers can learn from you guys as well. And stay tuned, guys. We got another video coming out tomorrow. Thanks for watching.